It's Mac and Perry in the place. Da-na-na-na. Mac and Perry.
Go live to create.
Da-na-na-na. Mac and Perry invite you to stay. Welcome to the Windy City's finest On Location with Mac and Perry. I'm Mac, he's Perry, and this is
Amy Gaulin.
Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Amy. We're going to talk about your art and all the stuff behind us here. But first, we thought we'd do a little bit of get to know you, some questions, some games, things like that. So it'll be a fun time. How are you at trivia?
I'm okay at trivia. I do trivia every week with my mom on the phone. So
Well, it's nice that you can connect with her and do some
Yes.
trivia. So you're going to do great at this. We just thought because we're in Lethbridge and we're in Medicine Hat as well. We thought just to feature the city a bit more. It'd be fun to ask some questions about Lethbridge. What are people in Lethbridge called? A, Lethbridgites. B, Lethbridgians. Or C, Lethbians. Or D, all of the above.
I'm going to go with D.
You're right, yes. D, all of the above. Lethbian is kind of a colloquial thing, but the first two is the official.
I've heard all
Yeah,
of those
right?
being used.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing we call ourselves all the time. Not really. All right, history kind of question. Lethbridge is home to Canada's first A, irrigation pivot, B, most southern northwest mounted police post, C, publicly funded college, or D, slope mine.
A,
Irrigation pivot?
irrigation pivot.
It was C, publicly funded community college. Yeah, Lethbridge College, now Lethbridge Polytechnic, was the first publicly funded community college in Canada.
Oh, great.
Now you know. All right, we're moving on to the next one. This is called This or That. How about you pick the first one?
Fiction or nonfiction?
What do you go? You go ahead first.
Okay,
Fiction or nonfiction?
nonfiction.
And why is that?
I love psychology books, science books, learning about factual things that inspire my artwork. So I tend to stick to the things that are more like textbooks.
What was the last nonfiction book you read?
I'm currently reading Song of the Cell, and I don't necessarily understand all of it, but I like being in that microbiology mind space.
Nice, cool. And you're able to kind of help that inform your art, or is it just that one just for fun?
It works into my art. Phrases will come up in that book in particular, like protoplasm is the mother jelly that sustains life. And things like that end up working their way visually into my artwork. Something like that will stick, and I'll want to draw jelly and cells and things that I'm hearing.
Nice. Oh, that's really neat. Nice. All right, I'm going to pick one. Let's see. Plan ahead or be spontaneous?
Oh, it depends. If I'm doing art, I don't want to plan ahead. I want to be spontaneous. If I'm preparing an art show or something at work, I need to be really planned. I need to have a plan. And so it really, both.
All right, we will move on to our Tumbling Towers game. It's got different numbers on it, and each number corresponds just to a question that we've come up with here on our little sheet. We have not had it fall yet.
I might be the
It
first.
might be the first. Ooh. Oh, my goodness. Number
5.
5, all right. What was your very first job?
I worked as a babysitter. When I was 11, 12, 13, I babysat for my neighbors, and it was the best experience. I got to go on vacations with them and camping with them all the time, and the girl I was babysitting became like a sister to me, and it was really meaningful and fun, and I love playing, so I couldn't believe that was a job, and I just got to be paid for making mud pies in the backyard and doing art with these kids. It was a great first job.
Nice. All right, well, let's pull another tile.
Okay. 52.
Okay. 52. If you could live as any animal for a day, what would it be?
A monkey. Just to be able to run around in the trees and climb on anything and everything and swing around. That just seems so ideal. To be in the branches, in the leaves, and nestled into a little spot in the tree. Yeah.
Nice.
That'd be wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I got to see some monkeys in the wild in Costa Rica, and it made my heart jump out of my body. I was so happy. I've always loved monkeys, and there's just some connection there with them.
We're getting through lots of questions. Ooh. 39. If you could live twice as long, what would you do?
All of the art that I don't have time for. I would love to do more fiber art. So weaving and making papers, making fabric sculptures, felting. There are so many art projects that I need to just set aside and agree that I'm not going to be able to dive into them. And that is very sad for me. I'd like to be able to do so many things. And if it wasn't art related, I would be in astronomy. I would love to be in the sciences in some way or another, a biologist or something, just observing the world, seeing what I can learn from plants and animals and the stars and the universe. Yeah, it'd probably be something in the science realm.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. If I could live twice as long, it would be like 100. And I don't know. Yeah, I think for me, what comes to mind is maybe travel. I think, I've done a little bit of traveling, but I think if I had a lot more time, probably travel to maybe every country. Why not? So I think that's all the time we have for this segment. But it's been fun to play some games with you and get to know you a little bit. This has been the Windy City's Finest On Location with Mac and Perry. I'm Mac, he's Perry, and this is
Amy.
Yeah, so we're going to take a little break, and we will be back with another segment.
Hello and welcome once again to the Windy City's Finest On Location with Mac and Perry. I'm Perry, he's Mac, and this is
Amy.
Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today. And I had a great time watching you play the icebreaker games with Mac. And so I'm super excited to dive into more about your artistic practice and journey so far. And I think I'd like to just start really broad, kind of broad strokes, if you will. And just, what would you say to somebody about your artwork if they had no idea about your artwork?
Mm-hmm. My artwork is really based on animals, plants, people, and imagining that I'm in the lives of those other beings. So I like to imagine that I'm a bug and crawling around on the ground, and all of the weeds and grasses are ginormous structures. And so I end up drawing a lot of bugs and a lot of things from the perspective of a small critter. I want to share that awe of nature with people, and so that's what I tend to draw a lot of. Mm-hmm. I like making art about life cycles, what it's like to be living, what it's like to be dying, and so I will use a lot of plants to reference that, thinking about how plants will borrow materials from the earth and grow in one spot and die in the same spot and become materials again for new life. So those are the themes that will oftentimes make their way into my work. And they will often look really dark and moody and soft. They're emotional for me, so they have that emotional charge. And it's usually black and white. It's usually charcoal. For the velvety blacks and the rich brights of the paper.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that description. Lots of things are coming to mind for me.
If you think about a sheet of moss, that moss is a forest for somebody. For a little microorganism that lives in there, those are giant trees. And even smaller than that, what are those little organisms made up of, and what does that world look like? So when you scale down and when you scale up, you see these patterns that are repeating. Some of the smallest particles look, or things that we can observe, look like galaxies. And those are some of the largest things that we can observe. And those patterns are repeated at every scale. And it just seems so infinitely large and infinitely small that there's no end to it.
That sounds like a beautiful place to play as an artist. If you wouldn't mind telling me a little bit about the last piece you made, or the last piece you're working on currently.
The last piece I made is a drawing of a fawn. And it's a fawn that I just happened to look out the window into my backyard, and I saw it moments after it was born. And so I've been watching it, observing it while it's been growing up this year, and I feel a connection with that little fawn, and I wanted to honor that experience by drawing it. It's laying in the grass in my backyard. It's gazing into the moon. It's under the apple tree in my backyard, and it's in charcoal, and it just captures that special moment.
Nice. I think there's something in there for me about that idea of potentially the time it takes to capture those, as opposed to just snapping a picture.
It's time spent with the subject. It's time spent under my apple tree and sketching what I'm seeing, and then using those sketches from my sketchbooks for the finished, for the final drawing. So it's a multi-level process to come to a final image.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. So it's not a picture would just be like one moment in time, whereas this is actually, several moments in time, it sounds like. And
it is. A lot of my artwork feels like collage in that way, where I'll take an element of something I drew last year and then combine it with a memory I had from yesterday, combined with something that came into my imagination today. And so the timing doesn't always make sense for the elements that I've put together into a piece, but it's kind of like collaging a new story together.
I love that. And another thing that you mentioned, I think, in the segment with Mac, was that idea of getting into the flow of working.
You can tell when you're not in the flow, when you start working, and it takes a lot more effort to decide how to begin, what moves you want to make. And then at some point, you kind of drift into the flow where time doesn't exist anymore, and the space around you doesn't exist anymore, and it feels like the process of drawing, for me at least, is out of my control sometimes. And I can sense when that's happening, and I can let it happen. But it's it's something that I can get into most of the time when I'm working. And that's when the blockades in my brain turn off. That's when it's a more immediate expression. And then at the end of it, I'll look back and think, oh, that was 6 hours. I did not think that I'd spend that much time in that space. But that's what happens. You just go until you get too hungry, or you just need a break, and then realize that you've just been in a different world.
I think this is a wonderful segue into our next question, and I think we can potentially adapt it a little bit. But it's how have the people in your life impacted your artistic practice? But I'm getting the sense that maybe not even just people, but potentially animals and bugs and stuff. So
Yeah, I think it certainly started with people. The first time I was really floored by art was when I saw my mom's sketchbooks when I was a little kid. She had this really surreal way of drawing, kind of like Salvador Dali, where she had these wormy creatures that were curled up inside of a sun with arrows coming out, and that blew my mind. And I thought, what is this? And I tried to copy it and emulate it, and I was so inspired by my mom's surreal vision. And I was also really inspired by my dad's craftsmanship. He built a lot of our furniture. He built our houses. He had impeccable precision and craftsmanship, and I wanted to be like him too. I wanted to build stuff with that kind of precision. And so my parents have both made their way into my art with my mom's surrealism, my dad's craftsmanship. That has really come together. And I have a really creative family. I just feel so grateful that I have the ability to do this, that I have the resources to follow my passion, because it's so fulfilling for the soul, and I can't imagine not doing it. It really gives me a voice, and where I feel like I don't have one, and it helps me figure out who I am. It just makes everything easier when you've been mindful for a while, and when you've reflected for a while, and when you've grown and made changes that get you out of your blocks, and it helps you get unstuck from things that aren't working.
Yeah, I really appreciate that idea that, it's not necessarily a quick fix thing either. The whole instant gratification idea, and that it's not that. It does take time, and it is an investment in yourself, it sounds like, right?
And it's not a linear progression where it just gets better and better. It's
Right.
very much waves, and there are always those crashes and high points. And so to expect that just mindful practices will set you on a trajectory that's like this is unrealistic.
Right.
And it does take years, and it's constant. You can't run out of things to reflect on and to be mindful of, and you can't run out of ways to grow. So it is a lifelong pursuit.
I'm really curious about the introduction of charcoal into your work. Has that always been there, or is that something you found a little bit later?
The only thing I really focused on up until art school was graphite, just pencil drawing. I was introduced to charcoal when I was in art school.
Right on.
I had a teacher that tore apart everything I knew and made me rebuild from the ground up. And that teacher had the whole class put up big pieces of paper on the wall, gave us a stick of charcoal, made us cover the whole paper in black, and work it in with our hands, and then start erasing images out of it. And we were covered in charcoal dust, and it was such a messy thing. But at the end of it, I felt really connected to that process of discovering an object or a form in the drawing and pulling out the light and kind of drawing backwards. And also the type of paper and charcoal that we were using made for really flexible art material, because you can make the paper as black as you can and then erase it entirely back to the white of the paper and then make it really black. And then the more that you go back and forth between light and dark, the more saturated the paper becomes, the more depth the image has, the more it feels like it's shimmering and the more life it has. It felt really alive, and I was hooked on charcoal from then on.
What have been some of the reactions to your artwork? Can you speak to any special moments that you've had? People commenting on your art, positive reactions, negative reactions, which are also valid? Yeah.
The most positive and negative reactions I've had to my work have both been from my mom.
Oh, interesting.
I did a collaborative painting with somebody else, and when my mom saw that in a gallery, she bawled. And then we decided to give her the painting, so we brought it to her house, we hung it, and then she cried for an hour straight and said, "This painting fills something in my heart that was missing, and it filled me up so much it poured out of my eyes." I do get a lot of emotional responses. If I'm doing realistic portraiture and commissions for people where they want a drawing of a loved one that maybe has passed away, I love drawing people's family portraits and capturing the life in somebody's eyes, and giving that to someone is a really emotional experience. And sometimes I just make art that's more dreamlike and fun, and people say, "That feels like it came straight out of my head." That's what I dream about. That's my nightmares. That's like, these are thoughts that don't, like visuals that don't really make sense, but it feels like you're in my head.
And how does that make you feel?
That makes me feel like I'm on the right track, because that's the type of art that I really respond to.
Right.
The art that I love is art that feels like it was in my head, and art that really moves me. Or provides me with a safe place to have difficult emotions.
And so I'm curious about that idea of creating a safe place within a piece of art. I'm just curious if you could speak more to that.
Yeah. I'll speak to it with someone else's painting where I had this experience.
Absolutely.
There's a friend of mine, John Ross, who painted a deer that was dead, and its eye was open, and there was a bit of a glimmer of light in its eye, and there was a plant growing out of its body. And it was in this beautiful landscape with a little set of stairs leading up to it. It was like it was in a fairy tale world. And I stood in front of it and I cried, because as I was looking into it, I could feel like I could experience grief of people in my life dying. And I knew that it was a safe place to feel that, because it also showed me the beauty that comes out of death, and that new life comes out of death, and that everything is a duality. The sadness and heaviness of death can be paired with the peace and light of love. And you can look away from the painting if you don't want to feel it. But if you do want to feel that and release something, then that's what that painting is there for.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I don't know how to articulate my thoughts. No, that is really beautiful. And I really appreciate you sharing that, yeah, that's your experience with somebody else's art. And would you say that that's something that you try and offer in some way, shape, or form to people viewing your art?
I do. And I have. Sometimes when I'm making art, I start with an emotion that is really heavy and dark in my body, and I get that out in charcoal on the paper, and it feels dark and heavy on the paper. But then as I'm working the picture, I'm trying to find a balance and incorporate light into it, and kind of get to this 50-50 balance of there's darkness here, but there's also lightness here, and you can go back and forth. And I've seen people react really strongly to that work of mine, where they say, I don't know what I'm feeling, but this is making me want to cry. This is making me want to open up about something or release something or feel something. And so I do aim for that sometimes. And it's that process for me as I'm making the drawings. It's, I get to release something that's dark. I get to spend time in that place, get it out of my body, and then I get to find the peace in it and come around and come full circle with it and learn from it. And I feel like that energy is felt by other people because I've put that energy into the piece.
I love that. And it's reminding me of the idea of cycles, right? Life cycles and the cycle of creating a piece, and how that maybe is conveyed to people. There was another thought in there that has to do with the idea of, starting with something dark and potentially, that's something that other people might be feeling just in life and getting stuck in, and the idea of getting unstuck through trying to, add light or find light and find the beauty or the opposite, the duality of those heavy things, for sure. And so that's just something I heard that I wanted to identify, because I figure maybe it will help somebody. If you're feeling stuck in something really heavy, it's like, maybe there's a way or maybe there's a piece of art that can help you, unclog that thing that can help you move forward. So awesome.
Yeah. There was a moment where I ran into someone spontaneously in a park, and we had a really meaningful conversation. And at the end, I'd asked him, well, how do you get rid of darkness? Like, what do you do with it? And he said, well, what happens to the darkness in a room when you turn on a light? And it's so simple, and it's oversimplified maybe, but just the power of light to make darkness a little less heavy. It's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I think I'm going to leave that there for now. Again, I feel like I could talk about it for ages. But I think our last question for you here would just be, how has your artistic practice changed you?
It has changed me in every way of being. I see the world so much differently from being an artist. I notice way more because I'm studying how would I draw that, and just from observing the world and studying it, I'm learning so much just by listening. I'm noticing moments that I wouldn't if I wasn't interested in documenting what I'm seeing and what my experience is. I notice a lot more awe and beauty, and I notice a lot more in nature, and it's helping me figure out myself and what I like and how I want to be. And so I think the biggest change is that the way I'm seeing the world.
I think that's a beautiful note to end off on. So I think that is all the time we have for this segment. So thank you so much for talking with me. This has been the Windy City's finest on location with Mac and Perry. I'm Perry, he's Mac, and this is
Amy.
And we will be right back with our last segment.
Welcome to Windy City's finest on location with Mac and Perry. I'm Mac, he's Perry, and this is
Amy.
Well, Amy, so we've been talking about, we got to know you a bit in the first segment, and we talked about kind of your artistic practice. And for this, we call it like the showcase, and it's time to kind of show your art and talk about it, and it'll be fun. So we've picked a few pieces out that we could show you, and I think I'm going to start with this one, if that's all right with you. I'm just going to set it here. What is the name of this piece? Does it have a name?
It's called Other Side, and this is one of the pieces I started without a plan. It started with the frame. So working at a frame shop, there are often frames that we've built to the wrong size, or they've come in at the wrong size, and I fall in love with them and I decide I'm going to make an art piece for that. So For this one, I just started getting charcoal on the paper and waited to see what would emerge. And what started happening was these little nests started coming out. So I wanted to put an egg in one and another creature of some sort in another. I don't know what kind of creature that is. And added a bit of a vortex between them. This is one of those pieces where I don't know what it's about.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of told me like, well, just pick some pieces that stand out to you, and yeah, it stood out to me when I saw it. It has this very like otherworldly feel that I enjoy. I'm very kind of supernatural or science fiction-y kind of is the way I felt about it.
It does have those elements because that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the power of new life, which is the egg. Something's growing in there. It's emanating this light, this power, and this thing senses it. And it's cozy, it's safe, it's kind of surrounded by a tree. It's I don't think it's threatened, but the vortexes and odd spaces like that are very science fiction, and it's more the feeling of that I'm going for when I'm drawing.
Yeah. All right, I think we're going to look at another piece here. Sure, yeah. Harry wants to take this away. Thank you very much, my assistant. Let's just do this one next, sure. All right. Yeah, again, this one, looking at it just on the wall, really kind of like, oh, that looks different. It definitely stood out to me. So tell me about this piece, Amy.
This is a piece that I had the paper. I was trying to do a bunch of different drawings that weren't working. I got frustrated and made the paper entirely black and just started rubbing the charcoal around, seeing if I could see any shapes emerging in it. And I was looking outside my studio window and saw a rhubarb leaf and thought, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll try to put a bit of a rhubarb leaf here. And then I started seeing the shape of maybe a hill. So I started erasing lightness around it and just responding to whatever shapes my hands had made on the paper and the charcoal had made as I was putting it down. And then a bird thing emerged, and the rhubarb leaf became a tree, and the bird became this creature climbing a hill. And I thought, it's looking very curious. What is it looking at? And so there was this tree form here that was emerging, and I thought, well, if there's a little hole in that tree that goes into a space underneath the tree, what kind of creature could be down there? And in another drawing I had done, this worm wearing a helmet had emerged. And I thought, that's a great character to put under this tree in a little hidey hole that he knows that the bird is up there. The bird's curious about what's under here, and what kind of a relationship do those two characters have together. And so a story came out of it, but it started as a black piece of paper.
Yeah, no, it's very striking. I really like it, yeah. And then like a piece like this, like how long would this take you to make?
If it's from imagination, it's way quicker than if I'm drawing something realistically from a photo reference. So this would have been maybe 3 days of 3 full days of working on it, taking breaks, stepping back, looking for shapes, looking for story, and going back in and working it, and then refining the details. These are, drawings from imagination are relatively quick.
You mentioned like collaborating on pieces with artists, and again, not knowing much about this world, like what is that like? Like, what is that like to collaborate? How does that actually work to collaborate with another artist on a piece?
It's different for different artists. There's someone that I collaborate with regularly where we will work on on the same piece will make some big moves, lay down a bunch of paint, and then step back from it and just look at it and talk about it for quite a while before deciding what the next step is. Then we'll agree on a step, mix up paint together and lay it down together, and then maybe go back in and destroy it. But there's a lot of sitting back and talking through it with each other, what we're seeing, what isn't working, how we might solve this problem. And you end up solving problems much differently than when you're working alone, because maybe they've discovered a different way of working with the material than that you haven't tried, or your skills tend to really come together and help each other shine.
All right, let's check out this piece, an octagonal one. I bet you this is a frame that you, look, I can just set this one on here. That's perfect. Hopefully the angle is okay. I'm just going to rotate it a bit. Is it okay? Great. Lovely. Amy, tell me about this piece.
This is a piece that started with the frame. And so when it's an octagon or a circle, I feel like it's a looking glass. And I often want to put bugs in it, or a creature, or something that you feel like you can really dissect just by looking at it. And so I chose this grasshopper. This grasshopper I saw when I was in Costa Rica, and it was the size of my hand. It was really large, and it was propped up on my flip-flop, and it was eating the foam around the edges, and I was astounded. I couldn't believe that it wanted to eat my shoe. And I wanted this grasshopper to be looking at something. I wasn't sure what. But I was listening to a book or a podcast, and the person was talking about complexity theory and talking about quantum foam, and how kind of at the smallest elements of our world we're made up of this quantum foam. And so I had these bubbles in mind, these different particles. It's kind of like a galaxy, it's kind of like a cell, it's kind of like quantum foam, it's kind of like a mirror. And this grasshopper is just mesmerized by whatever's happening here. And so it kind of feels like a bit of a black hole, but also this light. So it's balancing on either side of it.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I love how you're incorporating your interest in science into your pieces. And you mentioned like your notebook and the spider in an earlier segment. I kind of just want to see it. I want to see the drawing of the spider that you had been making. So if it's not too much trouble, if we could quickly pull that out.
It isn't.
Yeah, is it here?
It's in this one.
Yeah, perfect.
A big part of my practice is sketchbooking.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I get a lot of my inspiration. I sketchbook what I see.
Okay, so this is the spider that you saw in the studio here?
Yes.
Nice. Lovely. And then he's in the ocean, it looks like. What's going on there?
And underneath the apple tree in my backyard that the fawn is under in one of my drawings.
So this isn't necessarily like these aren't connected at all. It's just you had space. And so
they're not connected. This is kind of just me observing what I'm seeing, putting it together wherever it feels right, and then seeing if it creates its own story, or this is something just from imagination. It's just a doodle, and this is an observation from my backyard, and this is a spider from today. But putting them together makes you think, well, maybe there's a story here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I appreciate you showing me these pieces. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I've learned a lot. So yeah, thanks so much for chatting with me.
Thank you.
Yeah, so this has been the Windy City's Finest On Location with Mac and Perry. I'm Mac, he's Perry, and this is
Amy.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you again next time. It's Mac and Perry in the place. Da-na-na-na. Mac and Perry.
Go live to create.
Da-na-na-na. Mac and Perry invite you to stay.